Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 271. Without any delay, start explanation. The golden storm appeared unexpectedly. The entire space seemed to be torn apart. The competition stage shook violently while the audience witnessed the surrounding space about to collapse. Undoubtedly, the strike was as powerful as the complete outburst of a three-word battle armor master. Tang San revealed his naked upper body that was all covered with golden scales. The audience could even hear the strong pulsating sound of his dragon core. At this moment, the thick and vigorous blood essence fluctuation that burst out from his body shocked every single person on the scene. It had ended. Yuan Yehue did not reappear. She vanished with the destruction of the Door of Light. However, Tang San was not in a better state himself. There were cracks on most of the scales which covered his whole body. Amidst the mighty explosion, his body was covered in fresh blood, and it was all his own blood. He panted loudly. He was almost sucked into nothingness a moment earlier. What an impressive Yuan Yehue! Apart from the shock in his gaze, Tang San felt a certain excitement. He had never expected that Yuan Yehue had already progressed to such an impressive extent. She was capable of seizing the opportunity during his observation of her to burst out with such a terrifying, attacking ability. Tang San almost failed to block her attack despite his two-word battle armor's protection coupled with his all-round amplification of the Golden Dragon King. At the end, he sacrificed his battle armor with his soul power and bloodline power, which was a heavy price to pay for launching the Golden Dragon Tremor Burst. Only then did he manage to turn defeat into victory. Meanwhile, the ghastly punch had left behind a profound impression on his mind. It was a first for him being caught in such a tight corner ever since he participated in this year's competition. Although Yi Xinglan comprehended the Sword Soul, Yuan Yehue had surpassed her ability now. Moreover, it was Tang San's first encounter with Yuan Yehue's main martial soul after all this while. It turned out her main martial soul was not the Titan Giant 8 but the Fallen Angel. Even though his wretched condition was mostly due to him being overly conservative, he managed to affirm that Yuan Yehue's fighting capacity had achieved such a powerful level. How could Tang San not feel excited for having such powerful comrades? Phew! Yu Zhenyu exhaled. He slowly stood up as he watched Tang San, on the screen, caught in a tight corner. At this moment, his gaze turned unusually determined. Xiaoyan, I plan to begin the second stage of the Holy Baptism ceremony. Yi Xinglan was similarly watching the screen. Her gaze was burning hot, and her eyes were filled with an intense will to fight. Fine threads of fissures seemed to be cut open by an invisible sword in her surroundings. Xie knocked strenuously on Yuan Yehue's door, yet nothing stirred within the room. Due to her outstanding performance in the competition, Yuan Yehue was awarded a Star Do cabin exclusively for her use, which was why she participated in the competition from her room. As she was not allowed to enter the Star Do cabin dressed, she refused to allow Xie to wait for her in the room. Xie had seen the result of the competition earlier. He understood Yuan Yehue's ability the most. As a result, his heart was filled with concern. Not a sound was heard from her room at present. Something bad had happened to her for sure. A radiance flashed once. Xie's light dragon dagger was seen shimmering in an instant as he cut the door lock. He pushed open the door and dashed into the room swift as the wind. In the next moment, his body was frozen on the spot akin to a timber pile. He saw the Star Do cabin opening up. Yuan Yehue was crawling out from inside the Star Do cabin without a stitch on. They gazed into the eyes of each other. Yuan Yehue was both embarrassed and furious at the same time. You're dead. Before her voice faded, her eyes rolled and she lost her consciousness. Xie moved in a flash and hastily caught her falling body. For a moment, he hardly felt romantic. On the contrary, he felt a gush of sorrow invade his heart. I truly didn't do this on purpose. For semi-finalists. The Golden Dragon King entered the semifinals but was hardly impressive in qualifying. What sort of power was derived from the Golden Dragon King's final outburst? Was it a supplementary ability that came together with his battle armor? Despite having entered the semifinals, the Golden Dragon King's odds of becoming the champion dropped. The odds were 1 to 3. The Golden Dragon King had no weakness, but the Strength King lost in an unjust manner. What sort of ability was displayed in the Strength King's outburst in the final moment? Could the contestant possibly be an evil soul master? All sorts of news broke out at the end of this round of the competition. For a short while, Tang Wulin and Yuan Yehue became the focus of attention. Tang Wulin was the only person remaining to enter the semifinals amongst the Shrek 7 monsters. The schedule of the 4 semifinalists heading into the final battle had been drawn up by the organizer. Tang Wulin's opponent in the semifinals was the Gale Saber Demon Sima Jinkai, who defeated Yi Xinglan. He was the powerhouse with a profound comprehension of the Sword Soul. It was an original punch technique. After reviewing the entire process of the battle with Yuan Yehue, Tang Wulin finally understood that Yuan Yehue had created her own set of punch techniques with a profound comprehension of the secret behind her fist's consciousness. She combined her twin martial souls and the punch technique seamlessly to achieve a quantum leap in her abilities. It was the path that belonged to Soul Masters. There was no doubt that Yuan was progressing better than him. The Thousand Accusing Fingers was a skill that was passed down to him by old Tang. It was indeed powerful. Perhaps even Yuan Yehue's original creation of the Cloud Vortex Divine Punch could not rival it. However, it did not belong to him, so it would not be beneficial to Sublime himself. Tang Wulin's elevation in his abilities was mostly due to the mutual cooperation of his Dragon Core and Soul Core. In addition to his status as the Nature Child, which allowed the Nature Seed to fuse with his body, his natural endowments had surpassed those of his comrades by far. Yet, he had fallen behind in his own comprehension of his abilities. In this area, Yi Xinglan managed to exercise preliminary control over her Sword Soul, and Yuan Yehue, who created the original Cloud Vortex Divine Punch, were ahead of him. They had both found the correct path for themselves, which was their lifetime pursuit. How about himself, then? Could it be that his future was foreshadowed by the Golden Dragon King, which he was bound to accept the gradual elevation brought by the Golden Dragon King Seal's abilities? In any case, whether it was a skill that was passed down by old Tang or an ability bestowed by the Golden Dragon King's essence, they did not actually belong to him. Such a thought lingered in Tang Wulin's mind. Yes, I must find the path that belongs to me. His starting point was higher than his comrades. Consequently, it was even more difficult for him to find his path. Tang Wulin had never thought of it before his fight with Yuan Yehue today. His natural endowment was too powerful, such that he was solely dependent on it. He was not doing anything wrong per se. Going by the current situation, he still remained peerless. What about his future? If his pursuit in the future was to be at the peak of the world, then he would certainly need to find a path that belonged to himself. Without his own path, he would never achieve his dream. My path, where is it? Tang Wulin pondered quietly. He sat there throughout the night, yet he did not have a clue. He realized that it was not a path that he could find just by meditating painstakingly. Instead, he would need a certain amount of luck and opportunity. He let his mind settle quickly because he knew that the most important task for him now was to integrate all the abilities he already possessed. He had relied on his blood-soul fusion skill to remain standing at the peak of his rank. He would possess a richer and more rigorous foundation when he was done integrating all his abilities. He did not allow himself to be disturbed by his thoughts after figuring out the next direction of cultivation. He entered the meditative state rather rapidly, as he still had to fight in the Mecha Battles 8x4 competition in about 10 hours. As compared to the Soul Master battle, it would be even tougher for him. How do you feel? Blood 2 looked at his son by his side. Blood 9 frowned. If I'm not mistaken, Wulin is acquainted with the opponent. I've watched his earlier competitions as well, and he's not the same person he was in today's round. He hasn't expressed his dominance at all. Blood 2 nodded. However, what do you think of his final outburst? Blood 9 answered resolutely, that's definitely not a supplementary ability that came together with his battle armor, for no one will give his or her own battle armor the ability to self-detonate. Even if there is one, the power can't possibly be that massive. The power of his single strike is as powerful as the full force strike of a titled or ranked, three-word battle armor master. It's impressive. However, I can tell that it's very exhausting for him as well. At this point, his expression was caught in a daze briefly. He said, although I refuse to admit it, I'm beginning to feel that his ability is fast approaching mine. Blood 2 darted him a look. Losing confidence, huh? Blood 9 smiled and spoke, not really. The disparity between our abilities is still there. I lost to him the other day because I underestimated him. I haven't even expressed 30% of my ability. After all, I'm the true Blood 9. I'll certainly claim back my title by the end of the competition. Blood 2 said, it's good to be confident, but don't ever look down upon your opponent. Even if you're capable of claiming back the title, can you hang on to it? Blood 9 was finally quiet. It was true that Tang Wulin was elevating rather quickly. He was afraid that it would not take long before Tang Wulin became more powerful than him, and the disparity between them would get bigger if Tang Wulin continued growing at this rate. Blood 2 suddenly laughed. Normally, he was a serious person, yet he cracked into a rarely seen smile. The people who should be worried about that is not only you but all of us as well. However, this can be a good thing for the Blood God Battalion and the Blood God Army. Blood 9 raised his brow ever so slightly. His valuation of Tang Wulin was already quite high, yet he did not expect the extent of his father's approval of Tang Wulin. Jiang Wuyue sat absent-mindedly in the rest area's cafe. He drank his coffee quietly. His mood felt as bitter as the coffee in his mug. Yu Shui's insight of a person was spot on. Could Tang Wulin's true ability be that powerful? He was in the same competition, yet he did not even manage to enter the final rounds. On the other hand, Tang Wulin was advancing continuously. In fact, he was already a semi-finalist. It signified that he was capable of entering the final four among all the battle armor masters below the rank of a three-word battle armor master. Such a natural endowment would definitely put him at the highest position in the Soul Master's world when he became a three-word battle armor master. His own natural endowment was so distant from Tang Wulin's. How could Yu Shui possibly settle for him with such a drastic contrast? Hey, why are you here? A familiar voice in his ears jolted him from his daydreaming. Huh? Jiang Wuyue raised his head just in time to see Long Yu Shui before him. The corners of his lips twitched once. Why can't I be here? He wished that he could give his big mouth a tight slap as soon as he said that. Long Yu Shui did not mock him, which was unusual, but she took a seat opposite him instead. Jiang Wuyue looked at Long Yu Shui and was surprised to find that she had regained her composure and was no longer sulking since their last encounter. Yu Shui, you. Long Yu Shui spoke indifferently. Are you going to ask me why I look as if I'm not bothered at all? Jiang Wuyue nodded foolishly. Long Yu Shui said, because I'm a soldier. Huh? Jiang Wuyue thought to himself. How's this related to being a soldier? Long Yu Shui continued, it's not just about men in this world. It's not like a woman can't live without a man. It will be fond memories for me. However, he's not the only person in my life, and he's not going to be my future either. I should remain open-minded, so we won't feel awkward with each other. I like him, but he has someone else in his heart. Since I can't win him over, we shall just be friends then. Jiang Wuyue chose to dwell on the small matters upon hearing her graceful words. Yu Shui, you can't be having a mental breakdown, right? Don't tell me that you've taken a fancy in other men now. Go away. This is a competition. Tang Wulin told himself secretly after he was done choosing his mecha. In his perception, his biggest weakness during the battle with Yuan and Yehue was that he had lost control. His lack of vigilance almost resulted in his downfall at the end. His defense was not powerful enough. If not for the super-powerful outburst of the Golden Dragon Tremor, he would have lost. The mecha battle would be more difficult. However, his target was the championship. He wanted to be the champion. He held the spear in his hand as he walked slowly into the competition arena. The clanging sounds produced from the movements of the mecha were completely drowned by the audience's cheers. Tang Wulin's lip cracked into a faint smile. He would certainly win. His opponent appeared on the competition stage in the same manner. The opponent's mecha was also a close combat mecha which was holding a sword in its hand. The opponent appeared nothing out of the ordinary, but he could not help feeling fearful in his heart when he saw the number 255 above the opponent's head. It was him. He had some knowledge of the opponent. Undoubtedly, he himself was not a popular choice for the championship in the mecha battles. On the other hand, the person before him was one of the popular choices for the championship. Although he was not the most popular, he was in the top 3. Just like how Tang Wulin had the nickname of the Spear King, this person had a nickname, too. He was the Metal Master. His ability was his control over all sorts of metal elements. Other than his identity as a Soul Master and a Mecha Master, he was at least a rank 7 mecha maker. Although the later stages of mecha making were slightly easier than forging, it was still not an easy task to achieve. A rank 7 mecha maker could make a black mecha easily. Furthermore, this person's mecha making standard had achieved rank 8 and above. It was terrifying indeed. If it were a one-on-one individual match, the person's ability was utterly not worth a mention before Tang Wulin's. However, a qualitative transformation was produced from the complementation between his metal element martial soul and his mecha. The Spear King versus the Metal Master. Xiaolin, who do you think will win? The commentator Hai Shu in charge of commentating the mecha battle asked the other named Xiaolin. It goes without saying. I think that most people have the same thoughts as me. The Metal Master's participation in this year's Federal Star Do Battle Network Challenge is supposed to be favorable for him. His ability surpasses the other martial souls in the competition. The Spear King is equally impressive, yet I'm afraid that it's highly unlikely he'll win when he's confronted by such an opponent. If both of them were to use their most skilled mechas in real life, perhaps the Spear King still stands a chance to fight. However, the Metal Master's dominance in the competition right now is so obvious. Haishu heaved a sigh and agreed. That's right. We can only see if his explosive force is capable of defeating the Metal Master before the Metal Master completes his reconfiguration. Otherwise, I'm afraid he really doesn't stand much of a chance. Alright, the competition is about to begin. Let's wait and see. Perhaps, the Spear King is capable of performing miracles. In the competition arena, Tang Wulin looked at his opponent standing nearby. He raised the spear in his hand slowly. Metal Master, huh? Very well. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin. Tang Wulin moved a split second after the electronic voice announced the start of the competition. He held the spear in his hand toward the Metal Master without the slightest hesitation. At the same time, he turned on his mecha's propeller and with a gale force charged straight for the opponent. The Metal Master had also turned on his mecha's propeller. However, he was not advancing. On the contrary, he turned around and ran in an attempt to keep the distance apart. Tang Wulin's spear had an exceedingly swift flight. It cut through the air and left behind an arc, but the distance was still a few hundred meters. So, the spear would still need some time to fly over. On the other hand, the Metal Master's mecha began to transform as it flew away at full speed. The first transformation was the change on the mecha's hips and shoulders. The metal in those areas was melting rapidly while its internal structure was transforming simultaneously. During the transformation of the internal structure, one could clearly see that the metal took the form of core circuits before the external layer of metal sealed the circuits within. It was obviously a soul propeller. The Metal Master was most skilled in controlling the metal element. He was capable of altering and reassembling the mecha in the midst of the battle. During his earlier battles, he had even managed to completely reassemble the standard mecha in the competition such that when its assembly was completed, the mecha had the attack and defense ability of a black mecha. The Soul Masters were not allowed to leave the mecha during the battle, but they could use their martial souls to reinforce the mecha. How could a standard mecha fight against a black mecha? Almost everyone who had fought with him would choose a complete outburst without giving him a chance to remodel his mecha. Nevertheless, no one had yet succeeded up till now. Tang Wulin's spear landed on the ground as it did not manage to hit the opponent. On the other hand, the Metal Master relied on his ability to form the propeller rapidly and pushed his standard mecha into circling farther away at an even higher speed. He would need to maintain the distance between them right now so as to complete his mecha modification before he turned around to destroy Tang Wulin. When his propeller was completed, both parties were the closest to one another. They were about 150 meters apart. Tang Wulin chased after him, but his speed was truly too fast that it was utterly impossible for Tang Wulin to catch up. It was due to the disparity between the quality of their mechas. Tang Wulin's martial soul was powerful, but it was not enough to make his mecha's propeller accelerate further. This was determined by the quality of the mecha. Just when everyone thought that the competition was going in the direction as forecasted by the two commentators earlier, Tang Wulin suddenly had an outburst. His close combat mecha leaped abruptly and relied on its flight capability to suspend itself in mid-air. Soon after, the countless blue-silver Emperor surged out from the gaps of the mecha. The blue-silver Emperor stretched out into the surroundings before transforming into tentacle-like vines. Each vine exceeded 50 meters in length. The vines spread out on both sides of the mecha with a span of over 100 meters. The Federal Star-Do Battle Network Challenge Arena was large, but it was still limited. Tang Wulin's golden, skeleton-like vines of blue-silver Emperor had its control range vastly increased when the vines were spread open. Although Tang Wulin was still slower than his opponent, he managed to reduce his opponent's existing territory with his increased control range. As expected, the Metal Master was no longer at ease, as he was still modifying his mecha. He had only managed to modify a propeller to facilitate the change of direction with more agility while running at full speed. He began to modify the mecha's main core simultaneously. Once the main core was completed, the level of compressed energy supply to the mecha would be different. By then, he could rely on the absolute dominance of his mecha to suppress Tang Wulin. The Metal Master had a 7-ring Soul Sage cultivation base. The combination of his skilled control over metals and having a higher rank mecha gave him the absolute confidence to win the competition. His mecha shimmered with great ease in the arena with its unusually swift speed. Even though Tang Wulin's control range was expansive now, he still could not catch up to his opponent. The Metal Master sat inside the control cabin as his entire body was glimmering with the metal's shine. He transformed his mecha continuously. Meanwhile, his lips had cracked into a victor's smile. His mecha was about to achieve the purple mecha's standard soon, but he was not in a rush at all. He would destroy the opponent with a crushing blow when his mecha was modified to a black mecha, just like how he would squash an ant. He would not give the opponent any chance at all. Why do they call him the Spear King? He's simply a joke. Just as he was feeling calm in his heart, he unintentionally passed by Tang Wulin's spear which had landed on the ground earlier when he was dodging Tang Wulin. It was at this moment when a stream of golden radiance suddenly shot out from the spear and wound around his mecha's legs at lightning speed. The other end of the golden radiance was anchored to the spear which was stabbed deep into the ground. His mecha's hind legs were wound during its flight. The mecha's body suddenly lost control just like a car in an emergency brake situation. The Metal Master was stunned. He reacted by operating his mecha hastily. However, it was too late. A large stretch of the blue-silver Emperor surged out from the ground without warning and transformed into sharp spines that pierced through his mecha. Then, the blue-silver Emperor transformed into vines which twined around the mecha, tying it firmly to the ground. The mecha immediately liquefied under the Metal Master's control in an attempt to flee. However, Tang Wulin was already waiting for him. A foot stamped heavily onto the ground followed by a layer of yellow radiance unleashed from Tang Wulin's mecha. It was the gravitational control. At the same time, a large stretch of the blue-silver Emperor began to churn violently on the ground and break the liquefied metal apart into small pieces. The spear on the ground with its radiance interlaced was akin to a lightning storm as it carved out streaks of indentations on the ground. The liquefied metal did not even have a chance to flee as it was cut into countless bits. What do you mean by helpless? Tang Wulin had devised his tactics when he discovered that his opponent was the Metal Master. The Metal Master was most skilled in metal control and mecha making. Actually, Tang Wulin was not his match in a mecha battle. Nonetheless, Tang Wulin was also a control-type Soul Master. The liquefied metal was the Metal Master's famed technique. Even without the mecha, he was still difficult to defeat with this technique of his. There was almost no other ability capable of restricting him other than an ultra-high temperature attack. Nonetheless, this was a mecha battle. When the mecha's damage was beyond a certain degree or it was too fragmented, the system would automatically perform an assessment to determine the result of the competition. Number 66, Victory. The Metal Master was still in the midst of assembling his liquefied metal when the electronic voice announced the result of the competition. The gold song, which had just performed remarkably well, transformed into a stream of golden radiance before squeezing itself into Tang Wulin's mecha and vanished. The Blue-Silver Emperor was retracted. It was only then the liquefied metal managed to return to its initial mecha state. Regardless of how recalcitrant the Metal Master was, he had lost the competition. The two commentators opened their mouths in disbelief. It's over? He had lost? The Metal Master had lost? Oh my God! How's that possible? How did the spear tossed by number 66 launch its soul skill? It looked like a snake-type spirit soul. Yet, the spirit soul was capable of launching the Soul Master's soul skill. Moreover, it unleashed more than one soul skill. What does it mean? It means that the spirit soul is at least of 100,000-year rank, right? Yes. How could a spirit soul possess such spiritual intelligence without a 100,000-year cultivation base? How could they have known that the gold song was actually defective when it was purchased by Tang Wulin from the Spirit Pagoda back at the beginning? So, it turned out that the Metal Master could be dealt with in such a manner? Even though Tang Wulin did not manage to kill him, it was enough for him to attain such a result in the competition. No one regarded the Spear King as a promising winner, but he managed to apply his special technique and super powerful spirit soul to defeat the Metal Master and enter the semifinals. The Metal Master felt utterly depressed for his loss. At the same time, he realized that he had not paid much attention to his spirit soul before. A powerful spirit soul could actually be useful and effective on the battlefield. He lost on his battle tactics and misjudgment in the competition. The spirit soul hidden by the Spear King had a decisive effect on his victory. Tang Wulin did not feel overly excited in defeating his opponent. In his opinion, the Metal Master's ability, albeit impressive, was still lacking when compared to a top-grade mecha master like Ling Wuyue. His ability at improving the mecha was outstanding. However, if both parties used black mechas, then he would no longer have the edge in a battle. It was very difficult for a mecha to launch a wide-range attack which resulted in the opponent being able to evade Tang Wulin. Naturally, Tang Wulin would not deny that the opponent was superior in mecha making. He was truly an exceptional powerhouse. Anyhow, Tang Wulin enjoyed fighting against a powerful opponent, especially one skilled in operating a mecha. It provided an opportunity for him to elevate himself. Today's battle provided him the chance to apply his battle tactics appropriately. The victory in the competition was achieved by using such methods. He was one of the semi-finalists in the mecha battle. What sort of powerhouses would Tang Wulin encounter in the next two rounds of the competition? He did not have the upper hand in his mecha operating skills actually, but his trump card was his three great spirit souls. Generally, a soul master who possessed a spirit soul of Tang Wulin's rank was already an elite soul master. However, he relied on the Golden Dragon King bloodline's cultivation and a certain amount of luck to own three directly. The three great spirit souls had a huge amplification effect on him as a soul master. The effect was even more obvious when used on a mecha. Tang Wulin's Overlord Dragon had yet to reveal itself, while the Damask Tulips Devours the World was capable of amplifying his soul power on an exceedingly large scale within a short period of time. Tang Wulin was not only anticipating the day he would be the overall champion. He was also looking forward to meeting even more powerful opponents at the same time. He could elevate himself even more by fighting against true powerhouses. He exited the Star Doe cabin and returned to his room to continue cultivating. For reasons unknown, he was not in the mood to return to the cafe ever since the day he drew Gu's portrait. He had all sorts of uncertainties brewing in his mind regarding Guu, Enea, and Guana. Although he devoted great effort to suppress those thoughts, he could not stop the recurring thoughts from appearing in his mind. Gu Yuana was still suffering from amnesia, so there was utterly no way he could ask her. Yet, the impulse in his heart was growing relentless ever since he drew Gu Yu's portrait under Long Yushua's request. What was going on? Gu Yu was a mystery to him since the day she appeared. He had always told himself to not probe into her secrets. Yet, how could he possibly stop himself from probing as their relationship progressed? He could not help feeling tightness in his chest. His room, which had a window, was actually located inside a mountain right next to the edge of a cliff. Precipices could be seen outside his window. In fact, he had a magnificent view of the snowy mountains. He walked to his bedside and opened the window to allow the cold wind into his room. The cold wind blew against his body and chilled his heart. The refreshing cold air calmed him and made him feel at ease, both physically and mentally. Gu, I can't be that selfish anymore. You're still you. I'll do all I can to help you regain your memories after the competition ends. Even if you leave me in the end, I hope that you can be yourself. I wish you can tell me what's going on with you. He had experienced too many upheavals and events since his childhood. His psyche was much better than the ordinary folks. Yet, the burden he was carrying was way too heavy for him. He could only be in a relaxed mood when he was with his comrades and Gu. He missed the days he spent in the academy back at the beginning. However, each time he thought about the academy, he felt the pain as if his heart was being torn apart. He exhaled and with it blew out the misery in his heart. He would advance a step at a time. Gu once said that the problem she faced was not something he could solve. She loved him, yet it left her with no choice but to leave him. In the final analysis, there could only be one outcome, which was the problem was insurmountable. Was it the Spirit Pagoda? Yes. He was so insignificant as compared to the Spirit Pagoda. Anyhow, he would still need to face it. So what if it was the Spirit Pagoda? The Tang sect and Shrek Academy were bombed while the Spirit Pagoda's headquarters situated nearby was left alone. Why was that? Tang Wulin had felt suspicious toward the Spirit Pagoda since earlier. However, if he wished to rebuild Shrek Academy in the future, there was no way he could avoid a confrontation with the Spirit Pagoda for sure. A powerful Shrek Academy was definitely not fancied by an organization like the Spirit Pagoda. What about the Federation? Was the Federation willing to offer support in rebuilding Shrek Academy? He would need to face all of it himself. At the same time, he would require good abilities and forces to be able to confront it. He would habitually remind himself each time he faced some hardship. It seemed a difficult situation appeared only because he was not powerful yet. He clenched his fists subconsciously. His ability was elevated time and again. He had made massive leaps repeatedly such that he was gradually advancing toward the peak of the Soul Master's world. He had become more powerful by the day as he was the hope and future of Shrek Academy, the Tang sect, and even himself. He would advance with great effort. The atmosphere in the Blood God Army recently was intriguing. There was an air of excitement at the place when compared to the usual days. Jiang Wuyue had mentioned that the Golden Dragon King was his bosom buddy and also the newly appointed Blood 9 in the Blood God Battalion. The news spread quickly over the entire army and became a hot topic of conversation. Such a young Major General was unprecedented in the Blood God Army. The Golden Dragon King had fought his way to be one of the semi-finalists in the Federal Star Do Battle Network Challenge. It signified that he was the most powerful Soul Master in the army among those with a cultivation base below a 3-word Battle Armor Master. There were throngs of people gathering in the cafe because many people heard that Tang Wulin loved to drink black coffee. Recently, the sales of black coffee in the cafe increased tenfold. Perhaps, the rest of the fighters assumed that drinking black coffee could possibly help their cultivation subconsciously. Whatever may be the case, black coffee was definitely effective at stimulating a person. It may be a fabrication of the mind, but some people had achieved a certain level of breakthrough in their cultivation after drinking black coffee. Tang Wulin had not appeared in the cafe for the past few days. Many officers who wished to catch a glimpse of the younger generation in the army were there in vain. Nevertheless, news about Tang Wulin, including the video recordings of his participation in the competition, had begun to spread widely in the army. The Blood God Battalion disseminated the information regarding the life tide incident which had appeared in the barracks earlier. Everyone received benefits from the life baptism brought by Tang Wulin after he had achieved a breakthrough. Later, the Blood God Battalion carried out a detailed study of the incident. Everyone in the army, whether it was the Blood God Army's regimental commander or the other high-ranking officers, had acquiesced to the dissemination of this information. Although Tang Wulin rarely appeared in public, his reputation in the Blood God Army was in full swing. When Jiang Wuyue was eliminated in the previous round of the mecha battle, he inadvertently mentioned that Tang Wulin was the Spear King who had entered the semifinals. Tang Wulin became more renowned following that. He might be the sole person entering the semifinals of both the Soul Master battle and the mecha battle. After all, the other 7 semifinalists were obviously different from him. The people found it believable after having witnessed him in action in both types of battles. Jiang Wuyue downed a cup of hard liquor and complained to his sister beside him. "Chiyue, how long has it been since Tang Wulin entered the army?" "At most, not even half a year, right? How did he advance so soon?" Jiang Chiyue giggled. "Why, brother, are you jealous of him?" Jiang Wuyue spoke without the slightest intention of concealing his feelings. "More than jealous, I'm filled with admiration, envy, and hatred. Yushua likes him and his ability is improving really fast, isn't he? I felt he was below me initially. Yet, it has only been a while and I'm already falling far behind him. We're all human. So, why is there so much disparity between us?" Jiang Chiyue shrugged. "How would I know? Speaking of which, I'm interested in him as well. You have a good relationship with him, right? Why don't you introduce your sister to him?" Jiang Wuyue rolled his eyes. "He has a girlfriend and he has already rejected Yushue. Why would you go for him still? Hey, are you my biological brother? So, I'm much worse than Yushue in your eyes?" Jiang Chiyue had her hands on her hips with a furious expression on her face. Jiang Wuyue hastily said with a flattering smile, "Of course not. You and Yushue each have your own beauty. I thought beauty is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it?" Jiang Chiyue pouted her lips. "Don't give me that. I'm too lazy to retort your inarticulate speech. Served you right that you didn't get Yushua to be your girlfriend." Jiang Wuyue spoke helplessly. "I don't know what's going on either. I'm tongue-tied when I'm with her. Even I wish to give myself a slap." Jiang Chiyue spoke eagerly. "I can help you out if you really wish to give yourself a slap." Jiang Wuyue spoke with an unpleasant tone. "Go away. Speaking of which, how far do you think Tang Wulin will go in the following competition?" Jiang Chiyue shrugged and said, "Is it important? Isn't it enough that he can enter the semifinals of both the Soul Master battle and the Mecha battle? It's proof that he's number one in his combined abilities. As for the competition, it's not that important, is it?" Jiang Wuyue said, "How's that the same? Winning another round puts him in the top 2, so he's at least a first runner-up. He'll be the champion if he's able to win 2 rounds of the competition. It's difficult to unanimously acknowledge the champion due to differences in public opinion. Also, no one's going to remember the defeated ones. Only the champion will be truly remembered by the people." Jiang Chiyue heaved a sigh and said, "Consider his following opponents. Do you think he's still capable of advancing?" Jiang Wuyue was stunned for a moment. He frowned. "It seems rather difficult. The rest of the opponents are not that easily dealt with." Jiang Chiyue said, "That's why I said it's good enough for him to be a semi-finalist in both battles. It's fine even if he were to lose the remaining fights. Anyhow, he's already famous now. At least, those recalcitrant opinions about him becoming a blood god at such a young age in the army have mostly subsided. I think Tang Wulin will be in trouble with the senior Blood 9 this time. I wonder if the Blood God Battalion is willing to increase the quota of the Blood Gods as a result of Tang Wulin's outstanding performance." Jiang Wuyue spoke, "I'm quite confident of Wulin for his non-human. Do you know even if he were to allow me to beat him up, I'll be the one who'll be exhausted to death in the end. Thus, he may yet be successful at winning the championship especially in the Soul Master battle." Jiang Qiyu spoke in turn. Soul Master Battle? His next opponent in the Soul Master Battle is the top powerhouse who has realized his saber soul since earlier. The opponent is renowned on the entire continent. He is also the ace in the hole for the Southern Army Corps. If not for his bad temper and poor social relationships, he's supposed to be a three-word battle armor master already. Jiang Wuyue shifted his gaze. He is the Gale Saber Demon, Sima Jin Kai. It'll be a difficult fight against him, for sure. Wu Lin's in trouble. However, he may not necessarily lose. After all, Wu Lin has his spear's consciousness too. Jiang Qiyu pouted. Consciousness and soul, is it the same? Jiang Wuyue scoffed. Why don't we place a bet? Jiang Qiyu smiled and asked, what are we betting with? Jiang Wuyue answered, I thought you've always wanted a black spirit shield as your mecha's equipment. If I lose, I'll buy you one with my merit points. If I win, then you'll help me ask Yu Xue out, at least, for a meal with me. How's that? The bet is whether Wu Lin can defeat the Gale Demon Saber, Sima Jin Kai. Jiang Qiyue's eyes glowed. Sure, I'm in. At present, Long Yu Xue was sitting in her room. She looked at the soul screen on the wall as she quietly awaited this year's Federal Star Do Battle Network Challenge semifinals. She was utterly unaware that she had already been betrayed by her best friend. There was still half an hour before the semifinals began. Could he win? Long Yu Xue was feeling slightly anxious. Her emotions toward Tang Wulin was complicated. She was caught in a daze for a long time upon her return the other day. She was well aware that she hardly stood a chance now, yet she still could not refrain herself from caring about him. Everything else aside, at least she could ease the pain temporarily when she paid attention to his development. Since her younger days, she had always admired powerhouses. She had always imagined that her future lover would be a matchless powerhouse. It was not so long ago when she had a favorable impression of Jiang Wuyue too. Jiang Wuyue was already an outstanding man amongst the younger generation of soldiers. He treated her well too. So, how could she be unaware of his intention? Despite being outstanding in her heart, Jiang Wuyue was still not the absolute best. Somehow, he was still lacking something, and she could not quite put her finger on it. It was not until Tang Wulin's appearance. She clearly remembered every time his lips cracked into a smile. When she finally recognized her feelings, she suddenly realized that she had been so immature in the past. Love could not be measured by one's ability at any moment. It was a feeling and the flurry of sparks in one's heart in that split second. Even without Tang Wulin's outburst afterward, without him becoming powerful later on, she had loved him in her heart all along. True love happened when one did not care nor concern oneself over anything else. There should perhaps be a few relationships like this in a person's life. However, one would only need to experience it once to realize one's chosen love. She did not resent Tang Wulin. After all, Tang Wulin had never hurt her since the beginning, and he had not flirted with her even once. In fact, she felt grateful for Tang Wulin's appearance, which gave her the opportunity to truly feel how it was to be in love. Wulin, you must try your best. No matter how powerful the opponent is, you can certainly defeat him, right? In the living quarters, rest area, bar, and cafe. All the locations in the entire Blood God army were equipped with soul screens which were live streaming the Federal Star Do Battle Network Challenge semifinals. Just about everyone was anticipating the following round of the competition. The Golden Dragon King versus the Gale Saber Demon. The first round of semifinals was here. Blood One was sitting in the middle of the Blood God battalion while the rest of the Blood Gods were sitting by his side, including the former Blood Nine. Even a few deputy commanders of the Blood God battalion joined in to watch the competition together with the regimental commander, Bright Mirror Dolor Zhong Huanyun. It was not an overstatement to say that there were more than 15 titled Dolor rank powerhouses and 2 four-word battle armor masters congregated in the Blood God battalion's hall at this moment. There were fewer than 4 people on the entire continent capable of achieving such influence and power. Zhong Huanyun was seated by Blood One's side. Old cow, do you think that the boy will win? I thought the mission you assigned him is to become the champion. Is there any punishment if he loses? Blood One spoke indifferently. Mission? It was meant to be a joke. How would I know who's going to participate in this year's competition? Huh? Zhong Huanyun's lips twitched once. It's a little willful, isn't it? The heartless Doluo Kaudashi spoke indifferently. If I'm not willful, how can I become Blood One in your blood god army where even birds don't take a shit? The group of people gathered there could not help refraining themselves from laughing upon hearing the conversation between the two powerhouses. The heartless Doluo was right, for how could one ever find a bird in the snow mountains? Kaudashi, said Zheng Huanyun through his tightly clenched teeth. However, he cracked into a smile soon. How about us figuring out a way to solve this matter? Look, your blood god battalion has already reached its quota since earlier. His addition is pointless and in excess. On the other hand, my side is lacking a successor who's truly capable of running the entire army. I'll give him some proper training, so he can at least run the blood god army for centuries into the future, if he's with me. In addition to his ability to weaken the abyssal plane, perhaps we can then completely eliminate our powerful enemies within 100 years. The heartless Doluo dug his ears. What were you saying again? I didn't hear clearly. Just you wait, said Zhong Huanyun fiercely. Blood 2 could not help speaking. Old Zhong, stop talking nonsense. You lack a successor on your side. Don't we have the same problem here as well? Moreover, the boy, Wulin, is not destined to remain in the Blood God Battalion for eternity. Zhong Huanyun frowned. Of course, he had already found out about Tang Wulin's origin since earlier. That's not for certain either, said the heartless Doluo, much to everyone's surprise. Oh? You can keep him here? He's chosen and sent by your Tang sect. If you're capable of keeping him here, then it's fine for him to stay in the Blood God Battalion. Zhong Huanyun's eyes were shimmering with radiance. The Blood God Battalion was a part of the Blood God Army too. As long as Tang Wulin was willing to remain here, he would certainly be able to render his services to the army in the future. Kaudashi spoke, let's wait and see then. We'll have to see how his development is by then. Huanyun, what do you plan to do if, one day, we've truly settled the issue on the abyssal plane? Zhong Huanyun was stunned for a moment. He had never pondered this issue before because he had never thought that he could solve the problem with the abyssal plane in his lifetime. I've never thought about this. If such an auspicious event truly took place, then I'll do some traveling before I indulge myself in some of those trivial pursuits, I guess. Although he did not have a limit Doluo's cultivation base, he was only lacking in a final step. One of the reasons why he valued Tang Wulin so much was because of the life tide recently. It had finally opened up this door for him whereby he could stand firmly to take the final step. Rank 98 and rank 99 appeared to differ only by one rank, but that one rank made a world of difference at their level as well. Heartless Doluo turned his head to the side and looked toward him. If the day truly comes, I have a request. Zhong Huanyun said, what is it? Heartless Doluo Kaudashi said with all apparent seriousness, when Tang Wulin is rebuilding Shrek Academy, our army shall stand by his side. Zhong Huanyun was stunned for a moment. So you're saying that the army will help him to revive the academy? Kaudashi nodded quietly. Shrek Academy has existed for 20,000 years. How many qualified personnel has the academy cultivated for the Federation? How much of a legacy has the academy left for the Federation? How can we allow the academy to be destroyed just like that? Tang Wulin has an unshirkable duty as the leader of the current Shrek 7 monsters. Zhong Huanyun spoke with a deep voice, even so, you should also know that the Blood God Army is still under the jurisdiction of the army, no matter how independent it is. The Blood God Army was even established by Shrek Academy, the Tang Sect, the Battle God Hall and the Spirit Pagoda. Kaudashi nodded and replied, I know that. However, let me ask you this. If we were all that we had, do you think that we're capable of defeating an enemy as formidable as the abyssal plane in our lifetime? Zhong Huanyun asked in response, so you're saying that the problem can be solved with just the addition of Tang Wulin? Kaudashi smiled calmly and spoke, that's a possibility at least. Hence, I'm saying that he can play the most vital role when we take care of the abyssal plane issue once and for all. Then, when the Blood God army is no longer burdened by this, the army can stand at Tang Wulin's side. Zhong Huanyun frowned. Old cow, I understand your intentions and I know that more than half of our people are willing to support this. There won't be any problems with the officers that originated from your Tang sect and Shrek Academy. Nevertheless, there are also officers from the Spirit Pagoda and the Battle God Hall among us after all, and I can't simply ignore them. Cao Dashi said, I'm not asking for us to resist the Federation. Merely to support Tang Wulin by standing by him. At least, we support him on the surface so that he won't be treated unfairly as he proceeds to revive the Academy. Could it be that such a small request is not doable? Zhong Huanyun shifted his gaze. That's actually doable. Cao Dashi spoke indifferently. The Blood God army will always have something to do anyhow. The very purpose of our existence is to guard the continent. On the other hand, the Holy Spirit cult is rampant as ever now and caused a series of tragedies on the continent. If the issue with the abyssal plane can be solved, do you think that they should then be made our primary targets? Zhong Huanyun answered without the slightest hesitation, that is, of course, not a problem. I would have gone and taken care of them earlier if I wasn't still occupied here. Sure, it's a promise between us then. Cao Dashi smiled but no longer spoke. Without a doubt, he represented the Tang sect in the Blood God army. Blood 3 was indeed the person with the highest position in the Blood God army who originated from Shrek Academy. However, the total amount of officers from Shrek Academy was the highest amongst all. In a sense, Zhong Huanyun represented the officers from the Battle God Hall. Moreover, in the army, none were held in higher regard than Zhong Huanyun. The Blood God army was formed from 4 great forces, but in reality, everyone's original identities had faded slightly as they became part of the army as a whole. As Blood 1, Cao Dashi was well aware of the responsibilities Tang Wulin would have to bear in the future. He wanted to shoulder a portion of that as best as he could in order to ease the burden placed on Tang Wulin by at least a little. Holy Spirit cult was definitely the greatest enemy Tang Wulin would be dealing with in the future. Moreover, the Holy Spirit cult was a lethal enemy capable of using unscrupulous tactics. If the Blood God army could lend a hand in managing this problem, then the effort would at least buy Tang Wulin a good deal of time to revive Shrek Academy. The competition is about to begin, said Blood 2 suddenly. The group's attention fell upon the large screen in front of them once again. On the screen, they saw the seats that surrounded the semifinals competition arena were already filled. Anyone who owned a Star Do cabin and was willing to pay a premium was allowed to experience the competition in person. Even though the ticket fee was expensive, they had sold out very early. This semi-final match was even more exciting than the other. It was difficult to determine who would emerge victorious in a battle between the Saber Demon versus the Golden Dragon King. One was ranked second in this year's competition betting odds while the other was ranked third. It was definitely the focus of the attention. There was no doubt that whichever of them was the winner would be qualified to challenge the person ranked first in the betting odds. On the other hand, there was no suspense as to the result of that person's semi-final match. Tang Wulin closed his eyes as he sat in the waiting room. The golden dragon spear was placed horizontally across his knees as he sensed the divine weapon. He felt that the spear was one with himself. No trace of Spear's consciousness had emerged whatsoever, but in his mind, the golden dragon spear was already a part of his body and an integral part at that. Tang Wulin rewatched the battle between Sima Jinkai and Yi Xinglan paying more attention than before. He had watched it numerous times. The Gale Saber Demon Sima Jinchi's weapon was the dragon-slaying saber. In a sense, his peculiar weapon might even have a suppressive effect over Tang Wulin's martial soul. Of course, this would still depend on whether his dragon-slaying saber could actually outmatch the golden dragon spear. Tang Wulin might have some trouble there. Tang Wulin was certainly at a disadvantage due to his cultivation base. There was no doubt about this after the earlier match had already shown that the Gale Saber Demon had an 8-ring Soul d'Allure cultivation base. Tang Wulin was only at rank 65 at present. Even though he had the double cores, but there was still some disparity between him and the opponent in terms of soul power. However, this was not the most important part. The key element was the comprehension of one's weapon. The Gale Saber demon Sima Jinkai already possessed his own saber soul. His saber soul was ferocious and violent, as mad as a hatter. Yi Xinglan's newly formed sword soul lost to his without being able to resist at all. So, Tang Wulin took Yi Xinglan's place today to fight against Sima Jinkai. He had yet to fully understand his own spear soul, and his spear's consciousness could only be said to be present at most. This was the real disparity between them. It was also the reason why most people did not think that he could achieve victory in this round of the competition. The Gale Saber demon Sima Jinch's fighting capacity was too powerful. He once easily defeated a mecha battalion using his own power alone without donning his battle armor. A mecha battalion's organizational system was comprised of 100 reinforced mechas, with the battalion commander being a black mecha. Sima Jinkai was but a 7-ringed soul sage at the time. The entire process was akin to breaking a dead tree branch for him, with predictable results. One could only imagine how unusual his battle methods were. However, Tang Wulin was very confident regardless. Defeating this opponent would certainly allow him to deepen his comprehension of the Golden Dragon Spear and become an important part of his cultivation. Thus, his entire person had already entered a Zen state at this exact moment. He was completely immersed in comprehending the Golden Dragon Spear. Due to the stress of his upcoming match with a formidable opponent, he was drawing out his potential. The greater the enemy he confronted, the stronger and more powerful he would become. There could even be a breakthrough for him, as this seemed to have already become an inevitable event in Tang Wulin's cultivation history. He had just stood up slowly when the service staff called on him. He held the Golden Dragon Spear in his hand as he walked out of the waiting room in great strides. His eyes were glimmering with a faint golden color. The silhouette of old Tang flashed before him over and over again in his mind. It was always that moment when he launched the 1,000 accusing fingers. Deafening cheering sounds caressed his ears like a gust of wind, powerful enough to get one's blood pumping. However, Tang Wulin was unaffected. The external world sounds could not enter his mind while he remained in a calm, zen and empty state. He could sense his bloodline power quietly flowing in the Golden Dragon Spear. On the opposite side, Gale Saber demon Sima Jinkai had already walked out to the arena as well. The dragon-slaying saber was obviously his martial soul, yet it was already held in his hand, placed on his shoulder as he walked out. The rules did not restrict him from maintaining the presence of his martial soul as long as he did not unleash his soul rings. Sima Jinch's eyes could not help but reveal his eagerness as he watched Tang Wulin stride out with his tall and burly figure. This is the boy, huh? The leader of the Shrek 7 monsters whose cultivation base is above Zhengyu's. He's their captain. Other than Tang Wulin's companions, he was most aware of Tang Wulin's identity out of all the participating contestants of this competition. The Southern Army Corps was operated by the Holy Clan. They were such a monolithic whole that even the Federation could not poke its nose into their business. Even though Sima Jinkai was not a popular person in the army, he was deeply trusted by the old regimental commander. This was the reason why he was entrusted with the knowledge which other people were unaware of. He is Yu Zhengyu's companion of almost the same age, yet he managed to advance to this step. His natural talents are no trivial matter. Sima Jinkai had also watched Tang Wulin's match earlier. He greatly admired Tang Wulin's explosive battle method. Moreover, Tang Wulin had a wide range of explosive skills, so he had left a profound impression. Of particular note was his ability to turn defeat into victory in the end when he defeated Yuan and Yehui. That outburst was extremely intense. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.